Hello, hello, it's Saturday and it's time to do our virtual walk along Odessa's old town. Winter has finally come to Odessa. It's -4, but it feels like -7, but I'm all ready to do a walk. Today we're walking along the most famous, the most touristy street in Odessa's old town, Deribasovskaya. But we'll cover that part of the street which is often missed by our city guests. We'll do the street's first numbers. And this part of the street doesn't look touristy at all. So let me flip the camera and let's go. This is the entrance to Polish Street. We'll walk along it at some point later. Today we're gonna head up Deribasovskaya Street. We'll cover 2 blocks starting from the street's first numbers. Now, over there is the sign which says Deribasovskaya. This street starts with this monument to a man who is quite short and who has a spade and a map. Let me zoom in. See, he is with a spade and with a map. In fact, locals call the statue a monument to a grasshopper or a monument to a gold seeker. This is the statue to Odessa's founding father and the city's first administrator, Jose de Ribas. The name doesn't sound Slavic at all. Born and raised in Naples, in his early 20s, he moved to the Russian Empire and was instrumental in founding Odessa. The street is named after him. Here's the Black Sea and the port. The first piers were built over there about 200 years ago. And here's the beginning of Deribasovskaya Street. This is the number 1 house, and this is the second house on the street, built about 200 years ago as a private residence. Imagine the views the owner had. 200 years ago the trees were short, so the person had amazing views over the Black Sea. Later, in the 1800s, the building became the headquarters of the Russian Association of Shipping and Trade. Today it's owned by the Odessa Black Sea Shipping Company, although it's not clear what the company does, since it doesn't have any ships. Deribasovskaya goes east-west and is definitely not the longest street in the old town. The staircase leads to the road which goes straight into the entrance to the commercial port. This is the first house on Deribasovskaya Street, and although its facade looks tired now, in 1830s when it was built, it was quite a rich building which belonged to a very wealthy person. There's one interesting artifact in the arch of this house. Let me go in and show it to you. Here is a top of the old door with the word salve in Latin. It means hello. Somebody is doing the laundry. drying the laundry. Let me zoom in. All old houses are built from soft limestone, and that's today the problem for the city, because limestone is way too soft. We have a very humid climate, so it's not good for the buildings. Now let me go back. This beautiful big building, which is being restored by the city, after the restoration it will belong to the regional prosecutor's office. You can compare it with the house across the street. This one was built in 1830s. And that one, almost 100 years later, in the early 1900s. See the difference? Hidden in the courtyard of this house is a sculpture to a Polish doctor and linguist, Zamenhof. He's also a creator of the Esperanto language. Now let me go inside the courtyard, show you the statue, and tell you what it's doing there. Zamenhof was a creator of the Esperanto language. The Esperanto language is an artificial language which became very popular after the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution, following the spread of internationalism all over Europe. Socialists at that time were looking to use a common language which wouldn't be connected to any nationality and which they could share. So that's how the Esperanto language became very popular. You may be wondering what the statue of the author of the Esperanto language is doing in this courtyard. The answer to this question is very fun and simple. The sculptor lived in one of the apartments in this building, which is here in the courtyard. He created the sculpture in 1950s as a gift to either a Bulgarian or Polish delegation. But for some reason, they didn't accept that gift. So the guy was hiding it in his workshop for quite some time, and then he put it here in the courtyard on top of the well, which was exactly here, to prevent the boys from falling down the well. And then after some time, the sculpture got the basement. So it's been standing here since 1950s. Odessa's courtyards do provide an interesting insight into the local lifestyle and history. So let's continue our walk up Deribasovskaya street. Here's a barber shop, barber house, Admiral. Men's haircut. Open. Although we are in the lockdown, beautiful apartment building. And here's the office of the regional prosecutors. Once this building is finished, they're gonna expand their office and move into this house as well. In the early 1900s, this building housed the first in the Russian Empire flying club. Today, this is the Continental Hotel, not to confuse with Intercontinental Group. Deribasovskaya is one of the streets in the old town which has preserved the old cobbling. This granite cobbling was done around 1860s, 1870s. And here's a currency exchange. If you're gonna visit Odessa and is interested to know how to exchange the money, you'll see lots of exchange offices in the old town. Usually they show the exchange rate and it's quite safe to use them. Original owners of this mansion were a Jewish family of merchants and bankers. They owned the house in the second half of the 1800s. And now I need to cross the street. I'm crossing Pushkinskaya street. In the 1800s it was named Italian. Down there is Primorsky Boulevard and the City Hall. So the original owners of this mansion were a Jewish family of merchants and bankers, and the house across the street belonged to a Greek family who were one of the city's first settlers. And later the family member became the city mayor. And this tells you a lot about the city in the 1800s. In the 1800s, Odessa was a melting pot indeed. These black poles were put in front of the arches in the 1800s. You can see them in front of a lot of the buildings in the old town. They were put there to protect the walls of the arches from carriages. Let's continue our walk up Deribasovskaya street. This street is the only one in the old town which is planted with lindens. But lindens are the Soviet heritage. In the 1800s, the street was planted with acacia trees. In the late 1800s, beer production in Odessa really picked up. 3 people opened first beer factories. One belonged to a German, another one to a Jew, and the third one to a Swiss. Each beer factory had a beer restaurant in the city center. One of them was in this house, and it was called Bavaria. Guess who it belonged to? Of course, the German. This Bavaria restaurant doesn't exist anymore, but there is a nice pub across the road. We'll finish the walk there. This restaurant is shut down because of the lockdown. We are in the lockdown, and restaurants and cafes can only work for takeaways. The restaurant is named Oton. This gorgeous building was built in 1858. The year is up there on the gates. Before it, here had been a big house which was owned by this French person, Oton. That's the name of this restaurant. And that building, which belonged to a French person, housed a restaurant, a hotel, the first in the Russian Empire commercial court, and the only in the city French casino. Shopping malls and retail stores are all shut down because of the lockdown. Here's Odessa's iconic site, the National Opera and Ballet Theatre. So that building, which had been here originally and which was owned by the French, originally, instead of this building, there was a house which belonged to a French merchant. The house had a French casino, hotel, a restaurant, and a commercial court. That French casino and the restaurant were later described by Pushkin in his Eugene Onegin novel. Pushkin was one of the most famous guests of the hotel. And here's Pushkin's shadow with a piece of the original cobbling. Here is the entrance to the pub which I've just mentioned. Friends and beer. And this is the summer terrace. Locally owned, it was one of the first places which started making their own craft beer. Here's the beer menu. And let me finish my today's virtual walk here at the Friends and Beer pub. We'll continue tomorrow from the other side of the Deribasovskaya street, and we're gonna include City Garden. Take care and tune in tomorrow. Bye bye.